Morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for the COVID-19 Small Business Forum series in partnership with the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce and the Dr. Lucy Jones Center for Science and Society. Before we get started, just quick housekeeping. Please enter all of your questions in the chat box right here. We will have our questions being facilitated by John Brary with the Dr. Lucy Jones Center. Also, please make sure that you're on mute if you're not a speaker, just to prevent any type of background noise. And then the last thing is this webinar will be recorded and distributed to everybody who registered and will also be posted on the Chamber and Dr. Lucy Jones website. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber, Maria Salinas.
Great. Thank you, David, very much. And good morning, everyone. I hope you are all safe and doing well and preparing for maybe some festivities at home this weekend. I know I am with my family. It has been just a real pleasure to be part of this series and, for the Chamber to continue to champion the work of our small business community. We've done it from so many different perspectives, and these webinars have been key to making sure that we have the right information for such an important infrastructure of our small business community that we have here in Los Angeles. So this small business virtual forum, which has been done twice weekly series, has been co-convened with the LA Area Chamber, the Dr. Lucy Jones Center, and Wells Fargo. This is a partnership that we established a couple of weeks back, and it's been really something that has been of great value. I want to, again, recognize the importance of having these partners convene with us at the Chamber to ensure that during this time of crisis, we can help us all stay together and help us all navigate what we're facing right now. So at this point, it gives me great pleasure to introduce once again to you all Dr. Jones. She has been doing these virtual forums with us. She's a disaster scientist working in Los Angeles for more than 4 decades. You may know her from her work on earthquakes and the voice of calm and reason. But her background is extensive, and having her feedback and her commentary in these forums is greatly important. We're proud to have Dr. Lucy Jones join us in this forum series. So Dr. Jones, I will pass it right over to you.
Thank you, Maria. I needed to remember to unmute. I want to spend a few minutes today just looking at where we are going with the progress of the disease and the pandemic, because the messages are starting to change a bit. You're starting to hear that we are, the social distancing is working, and it really is. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean we're out of this anytime soon. And I have a couple of slides. I'm going to try taking over the screen. Let's see, there we go. Are you seeing my slides here?
Yes.
Okay. So just remind you that when we're in a pandemic like this, and the problem is that everybody is susceptible to this disease because we haven't seen it before, nobody's immune. And that means that as soon as it can get to a host, it's got a new place to go. And it means that it's spreading what's called exponentially, and it doubles over some period of time. We really don't know how bad it's going to be, and the estimates of who's going to die. I've seen the different models go through. Let's just remember they're models. One of my favorite phrases from my colleagues is, all models are wrong, some are useful. And we need to remember that when we see those models, what they're saying is, if this goes like I said it was going to go, this would be the consequence. And so it's, you know, the models are now, they're saying the number of people that will die is going down. That's because we've successfully slowed some of the spreading. It means that social distancing is working. And I'm going to try putting a bit of data in here, try to keep it, right. Right, just to remind you, the whole point, the big thing is how many hosts can it get to? And if we follow our normal life, no social distancing, and without our immunity, we were seeing doubling of the number of diseases every 3 days. And that would, if we didn't do the social distancing, that would continue until we ran out of people to infect. And then we see the curve coming down the other side. Because we have successfully reduced human interaction, the doubling rate has gone down to about every 2 weeks. So it's clear that we've really slowed things down. And this is where I wanted to show you a bit of data here. And I just realized the way I have my screen set up, I just put the places through things. But notice that these are the curves on a few different states. And so like this purple one is New York. And what we are plotting is cases per million residents, right? So this, when you just see the absolute number of cases in a state, that doesn't really tell you what's going on, because you got to think about how many people there are there to infect. New York is this purple line on top. And, you know, it got started around March 1st. It just hugely increased through here. This scale is not just numbers. This is logarithmic numbers. So we went from 1/10 of a case per million residents to 1,000 cases per million residents in about 2.5 weeks. You can see how it's now slowing down, and maybe even slowing down a bit more up here. California is this teal line. Los Angeles County alone is this green line. So notice that given the number of people we have, we're really on the lower side, especially because things started earlier. So actually, it's one of the things people are trying to figure out. How come California has stayed so low? By contrast, this yellow one is Louisiana, and things, or I mean, the gray one is Louisiana, and it's just really jumping on up. And in fact, I'm going to put you through one more figure, because this is the way that I've been looking at the data, is to try and take some physics ideas. And notice that here, instead of putting it against time, I'm putting how many daily cases we have against the total number of cases. And this is an easier way of seeing when it turns over. We saw with that other figure, you know, it was really difficult to see whether it was turning. Here, the New York data on one side, California on the other, and the line is the 7-day average. So this is sort of a weekly average. It's a better way of thinking of it than the individual points, which bounce around a lot. Social distancing got, the safer at home came through here when they were at 10,000 cases in New York. And you see they kept on going up to over 100,000 cases, but you can now see that they are slowing down. Same thing in California. Because we were having a slower rate to begin with, we brought in social distancing at a lower total number. And then you can really see we are starting to turn over. To give you the contrast, I put up Pennsylvania. They only brought in the social distancing in the last few days, and you can see their curve. There is no turnover at all. They are going up there to that really high rate. And so when we talk about what's going to be happening because of this, you can see for the other parts of the country that didn't get to the social distancing so early, they're going to be continuing to grow at the fast rate. And we're going to be seeing a lot more cases showing up in places we haven't been talking about before now. The good news is it really is slowing down. The bad news is it's slowing down because we're staying apart. And that means we're probably going to have to continue to stay apart for a while. to be able to turn this around. And, you know, it is going to be it's going to be a long slog, and we can't turn it off now, or we're going to be going back to where we were before, and where those other states still are, because they haven't been doing the social distancing for long enough. And we're going to be dealing with this challenge until we get a vaccine. So that's really all I wanted to say. Is the good news is the data is showing that it's working. The bad news is, because it's working, we're going to really have to continue to do it for a while. To get out of this situation, we need to be getting these curves to not just slow down, but actually turn down and start reducing the number of daily cases that we've got. We've got to be reducing the daily cases for a while. And then when we let up, we need to be able to track outbreaks. We need to have enough testing so it won't get out of control again, or we're just going to go back into what we had and have lost the benefit of all of the pain that we've been going through here. So that's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, very much for those words and for taking us through the data. We know that making decisions based on data result in good outcomes, and you have certainly given us the bit of reality, what we're really facing right now. And I think for us at the Chamber, understanding the impact of where we are from a health perspective gives us the data and the information to make good decisions about where do we need to be as a business community, because obviously when we social distance and when we stay in our homes, our economy is shifting and changing because a result of that. So thank you so much for giving us that perspective. At this point, I am passing this over to John Bawari. Let me make sure I've got the right, yes, I'm sorry. John Bawari is the Executive Director of the Dr. Lucy Jones Center for Science and Society. And John will be taking us and facilitating questions for the panelists that will be speaking next. And I'll pass it over to him so he can introduce our next group of speakers. John?
Great. Thank you very much, Maria. And thanks, Dr. Jones, for sharing that data with us. So in addition to Dr. Jones and Maria, who will both stay on the line, we have an esteemed panel of experts joining us today on the forum to provide all of you the ability to ask the questions that may be just swirling in your heads around your business or your employment situation relative to this crisis that we're in. I'll quickly introduce them, and you can see them on your screen, but for those that are calling in, we have Ines Pierce, who's the Senior Advisor for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and CEO of Pierce Global Partners. She also runs the U.S. Chamber's Disaster Help Desk, so she is in the business of answering questions for small businesses across the country for more than a decade. We have Brian Moeller, who's the Senior Vice President of Retail and Small Business, and he's a credit manager at Wells Fargo here in Los Angeles. We have Xiomara Peña, who is the California Program Director and National Latino Entrepreneurship Director at Small Business Majority. We have Tanua Thrash Intuk, who is the Executive Director of Local Initiative Support Coalition, known as LISC, Los Angeles, LISC LA. And then finally, Sebastian DeVivo, who's the co-founder of LIST Ventures, and he is an Bixel Exchange Small Business Development Center advisor. So we have these experts plus Dr. Jones to answer your questions today. And I'd like to start off with a couple questions that came in actually before the session started today. But I'd like to start with Xiomara, and can you just tell us, and this is actually a question we'll ask to each of you, but Xiomara, to start us off, what are you hearing out there in a few moments here, tell us what you're hearing in your work in the last week or so.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you once again for to the LA Area Chamber for your leadership in hosting webinars like this. It's incredibly important. I'll just get right to it. Small business owners in not just here in LA, but in California are struggling. We are off to a rocky start around the payroll protection program, as well as challenges that have been experienced by business owners through the economic injury disaster loan program. We're hearing concerns from small business owners around not getting the three-day loan advance that was included in the last stimulus package embedded into the economic injury disaster loan program. Our organization has since sent a letter to the SBA administrator requesting that that process is expedited. And we know that the SBA is working diligently and overtime to make sure that this process works for business owners. But quite honestly, we know that a lot of folks are struggling to either get the answers that they need from their existing financial institutions or looking at what additional intermediaries they can go to be able to tap into these products. Additionally, I would say that small business owners are concerned that the fund for the payroll protection program will be depleted. You know, there was $349 billion allocated to this fund in the third stimulus package, the CARE Act. And as of Tuesday, I haven't seen the new numbers, but as of Tuesday, $70 billion had already been allocated. And so while we are hearing that in the next stimulus package, an additional $249 billion will be allocated to the payroll protection program, we know that there are still lots of work to be done to ensure that everyone has equal access to this program.
Great, thanks so much. Next, Tanua, what are you hearing in the last week or so?
Good morning, everyone. I'm again Tanua Thrash-Intook, the Executive Director for the Los Angeles office of LISC, and really glad to be able to partner with both Wells Fargo and the LA Chamber of Commerce on this, and my colleagues who are on the line. So what we're hearing is that there is definitely a need for capital infusion most immediately for small businesses, and to the extent that some of our very small businesses can access grant opportunities, there's a real demand for that. The last time I was on, I talked about our Verizon grant program, and we received 55,000 applications from across the country. We expect to be able to announce the winners of the first round within about a week or so, and we expect to announce another opening round of another 2.5 million. But we're seeing the demand for grants really, really grow. We're also seeing that communities that have small businesses that are often low-income communities, often people of color in those communities, are having a real hard time connecting with the PPP program and a lender that they might have a relationship with. And so we're really concerned about making sure that there are enough lenders who are in community connecting with these small businesses because we don't want these resources to run out before people can get access to them. So I can talk a little bit more about LISC and where we are. We're trying to also be part of the SBA PPP lending program, but haven't been able to, like a number of smaller institutions, announce exactly when that'll be available. But I expect that within a week or so, we should have an update on that.
Thank you for that. I'd love to go to Brian next. Brian, what are you hearing in this last few days?
You know, to not duplicate what has already been covered from Xiomara and Tanua, I know they're great partners. Thank you both for the work that you're doing out there. We too are certainly hearing about some of the frustrations that folks have had out there. You know, yesterday morning there was an announcement made about a new upcoming program called the Main Street Lending Program that was announced by the Fed. And there's a lot of questions coming up about that particular program, which is designed to create 4-year loans for companies up to 10,000 employees but revenues less than 2.5 billion, and potentially be able to serve a lot more small business owners. So I guess my message to the small business owners out there, and I see many of the questions and certainly have gone through a lot of the questions from the previous webinars that we've done, is I want to say thank you for your patience, as all of the banks and financial service providers and agents, have really gone to extraordinary measures to retool their systems in order to take in the numbers of applications and expressions or indications of interest that some of the larger banks have gone through this secondary process. But we're working hard. The loans are starting to come through. Loans are beginning to fund as well. And I understand the sensitivity about the timeline of, is my loan going to get approved before this fund runs out or expires? There's a lot of anxiety out there, which I certainly understand. And I'll stay on, and we'll be sure to answer as many questions as we can for you.
Thanks, Brian. Next, Inez Pierce, you're looking at this at the national level. What are you hearing in a moment or so?
Thanks, John, and thanks to the Chamber for this hosting of an esteemed panel here, because there's some great information that's going to be shared, which I know will be appreciated, because we're also hearing very similar things into the disaster help desk across the country. Similarly, and not to repeat anyone who's spoken already, that the greatest concern is really around finances, where funds are coming from, how quickly they're going to get them. So I won't repeat any of that. But there's another aspect of this, which is, for many years working with small businesses, they are basically unequipped for these kinds of disruptions. So we have a lot of businesses that are concerned because many of them, very small businesses, don't pay themselves. So when disruptions happen, they are really at a disadvantage because they're not only worried about their employees, they're also worried about how they're going to pay for mortgage and other expenses. So they're really at a hard point. The other things that we're hearing about is really their great concern for their employees and their workforce, and the concern about what's going to happen with them. They don't want to lay them off. They don't want to reduce their hours. They really want to take care of them. So they're hanging on with their fingertips on how to do just those things. And we're definitely working with all of the national organizations to put them in contact with what their local resources are. That's really, I think, a temperature of what's happening with these small businesses and what their concerns are. I would say that stress is very high. And what we tell them is that this is a traumatic event. It's a disaster. You're dealing with a lot of stress. And I think that one thing that often gets forgotten during this time when they're trying to deal with everything is that they themselves are not doing well and taking care of themselves as the leader of their organizations. And so the potential there is they're going to get sick in the coming weeks and months because they're not eating or sleeping and taking care of themselves, and the stress is high, which is a great concern to their recovery. The other thing is also checking in with employees and making sure that they're taking care of themselves from a mental health standpoint, because that's an important part of this whole process. Again, the stress level's high and the concerns are high. So that's just a quick sense of what we're hearing about right now.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Sebastian, what is it you're hearing through your work as the advisor there and at the Bixel Exchange?
So thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thanks again for hosting these. They're extremely helpful. On the ground, we've been hearing since last night that there has been a change to the SBA disaster loan program. The legislation called for a $10,000 advance, as Xiomara mentioned, ideally within 3 days. What has been happening on the ground since yesterday, apparently they're allotting $1,000 per employee as indicated on the short form application, the online SBA application, and that's what they're funding at the moment. For a couple days, there has been a rumor that Are they, you know, is it 10,000? Is it not 10,000? Is it by employee? What's going on? Right now we have seen the emails from the SBA. They are doing it by employee. So for some people who applied for the disaster loan and indicated that they had 1 or 2 employees, don't expect 10,000 for now. As of today, it looks like however many employees you jotted down on the application, that it's 1,000 per on the advance.
Great. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank all of you for spending some time with us. We have more than 30 minutes to go through some of these questions. I've been taking notes of the questions through the chat box, and I will continue to do so. I want to start with a question to sort of all of you on, and whoever needs to jump in timing. And maybe this is a Xiomara, I think, or Sebastian here. What is the time frame for response? A lot of folks have asked, we've applied through our bank and they told us don't contact us, but I haven't heard anything, or I applied through SBA, I haven't heard anything. What is the time frame that people should be expecting a response from some of these programs, and maybe speak specifically to the PPP and EIDL or other programs they might apply for?
So we have essentially 2 benchmarks that we're looking at. The very early applications, the one that we're tracking went in March 9th in the morning. That one received an approval March 21st. And then April 8th, the loan documents were issued to be signed and then mailed by snail mail to the SBA. And then the last step for the process will be the funding, which should happen in a week or 2. So for the people who applied almost, you know, from when the disaster was declared, they're likely to start seeing the loans funded in the next 2 weeks. Most people didn't. So the people that applied in the second half of March, you're probably looking at 2 to 4, 5, 6 weeks before you hear back, depending on the funding for the program. If you applied in the second half of March, there's a chance that you might have gotten an approval for 15,000. This was when the SBA ran out of the funding and essentially started issuing everybody an offer for 15,000. That has also been happening in the last day or so. It's been spotty. Some people got the offer, then it disappeared. Some people got the offer accepted, nothing has happened. Some people haven't accepted because, you know, if you're selling $10 million a year, a loan of $15,000 isn't going to get you far. So they're afraid to accept it. For now, we don't really know what's going on in terms of this batch of applicants, but at the very, very least, you're looking at 4 to 8 weeks for the entirety of the program.
Great, thank you. I'm seeing a couple questions come through right now, and so I thought I'd just pivot to them. And we had thought them earlier. It's about a sole proprietor. So there's a couple questions here. If you're a sole proprietor, you're potentially 1 employee, or you don't even take a salary, what is the relief options available to you? If you are a sole proprietor, are you considered the 1 employee, and can you claim that $1,000 from EIDL? Maybe Xiomara, you want to jump in on this one, or is this more of a Tanua?
I can jump in really quickly. So for the for the payroll protection program, that is a program that is open to self-employed individuals. And again, this is the program that is facilitated through, not directly through the SBA, but through those financial intermediaries that have SBA 7A designation. And as you know, they're adding additional intermediaries by the day. Now, for that specific program, there is a cap for self-employed individuals of up to $100,000. That is what was included in the language, but we are still unclear as to what will be forgiven and not, whether that will include employee draws, employee owner draws, owner operator draws, and things like that. Now, for the economic injury disaster loan, we just got a new update from some SBA administrators, and so I don't want to jump the gun here. I know I did include it in the chat, but we are hearing that economic injury disaster loan application if the loan advance will not be something that is eligible for self-employed individuals, but maybe someone on the line has heard otherwise from a different SBA administrator.
Anybody else of our panelists heard about other self-employed being available through the economic injury disaster loan?
I don't have a comment on that, but just to underscore, so other documentation that we're looking at as lenders, in addition to some of your tax returns and those sorts of things, we're also looking at bank accounts to get a sense as to you as the sole proprietor, what income has been paid to you, so that you can count that as well as part of your average monthly payroll. And then keep in mind, again, it's already been stated, but if you make in excess of $100,000, even as an individual sole proprietor, and you draw that down, the maximum is $100,000 that you will be able to draw upon in order to have that portion of the loan forgiven.
Great, thank you.
And this is Brian, and I just want to clarify the loan for self-employed or sole props. The calculation for estimating the monthly payroll cost would be a maximum of $100,000 for the year. So you would take that, and if for example, you paid yourself over $100,000, you would be able to use up to that amount to make your monthly estimate. So you divide it by 12, which you get 8,333, and then multiply that by 2.5 to get your PPP calculation. But not all sole proprietors pay themselves the same way. And as Tanua pointed out, it depends on how you take distributions. If you, in some instances, it could be a cash out or considered capital expense off of your business's balance sheet. So I think that the underwriter would be looking at how are you reporting the income to yourself as income, thereby needing your tax return to kind of understand that. I know that a lot of folks have gotten confused about that, and I saw some comments up above. Sole proprietors are not being left out of this program. I just want to make that clear.
And to clarify, the question just came in about another webinar provided information that said that PPP was only for sole proprietors or self-employed with employees, and EIDL was for everyone. Is this correct or not correct?
Our understanding is that no, that's not correct. That PPP is for sole proprietors and independent, independent firms that may only have one or no employees. They are eligible for the PPP program. Nonprofits are eligible for the PPP program, in addition to more traditional businesses.
That's my understanding.
Great, thank you.
I wanted to, I noted a question regarding part-time employees. To my colleagues as well on the line, we have heard, and it's been interpreted by our organization, that the part of the way you calculate your average annual payroll is based on bringing all those part-time employees or adding it up so that you're looking at full-time FTE. So if you've got 2 part-time people, you count that be like 1 FTE, for example. Has anybody,
thank you for catching that one.
Has anybody come?
That's for the employee count as opposed to the payroll amount, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because for the payroll, you would just add all those folks in, really, regardless, because that would be a total amount of your payroll.
Right. So if you have, for example, 4 employees, 2 part-time, at 20 hours, say, what you want to do is you want to say that the number of FTEs is 3. And then whatever the payroll amount is, the payroll amount. So if you say that you have 4 employees, they're going to take it as if you had 4 full-time equivalent employees. And when they go back for the forgiveness portion and look at, whether your number of employees has gone down, then they'll count it against you. And, rather than have to explain that, no, in fact, these were 2 part-time employees, just count them as 1 full-time.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that people understood that so that we could make sure that if you've got part-time employees, count them as part-time until you can get enough part-time, the 2 part-times to make full-time.
Great, thank you. We've actually seen a couple questions come through about real estate, realtors, folks like that. The question that's right here is, I sell an active realtor. Do I then apply for PPP and EIDL as myself, in addition to being an owner that's applied for an S Corp of Realty? I guess that's the question. Like, if you're a realtor, how does it apply?
It depends how you pay yourself. So at the end of the day, as an individual contractor, I mean, if you're an S Corp, you're in the firm's payroll, so you're part of that application. But if you do draws or you get paid by 1099, then you can apply for yourself as an independent contractor.
Right. I want to go to Xiomara for a minute. Can you give us an idea of who, you mentioned it earlier in your opening statements that they're adding people to the list of who's accepting PPP or opening up for enrollment. Can you give us sort of a feeling of who people should go to? There's been a couple people who've asked, like, they applied at one institution and they were told either they couldn't apply or they didn't qualify, or they're waiting for their application to come online. Can you give us a sense of where people might turn to for applying for PPP?
Sure. So Lendistry is one of those. They previously were an SBA Community Advantage lender and were waiting for their designation from the SBA. What they will be doing is focusing on smaller payroll protection program loans where we see the biggest gap, really. So they'll be focusing on those payroll protection program products that start at $10,000 all the way to $250,000. Now, I'll just preface this by saying, as with everyone else, there may be some technical glitches. They are only servicing in 6 states. California is one of those states. They also have indicated some of the frequent challenges that they've experienced with incomplete applications. So again, going to your SBDC network, Bixel Exchange also that has a great set of advisors there that can help you ensure that you're submitting a complete application, because that's what we're hearing from a lot of institutions is adding to the delay as well. So Lendistry is one we know of. Cabbage is an online.
Can I jump in here? Can you clarify the name? Is it Lendistry?
Lendistry, and I'll type it into the chat box as well so that everyone can take a look there. And they just opened up on April 6th. So they are a few days ahead, but I know that they had been adding servers and adding capacity to process enough applications. Another group that we have heard about, and this is just something I want to warn folks about, is online short-term lenders are brokering some payroll protection products. And the concern there is you may think that you've submitted for a payroll protection application, and yet you might be added to a queue. So just make sure that you're looking at the fine print on some of these sites. And I would just caution that folks definitely do their due diligence and recognize that every time you do submit an application, you could potentially be dinged on your credit if you do fall under a credit pull.
Great, thank you. There has been a question about the LA County grant program and a question about any state programs. So I know that we've been talking in the first portion here about federal programs and funding for small businesses. What other programs are available in Los Angeles County or from the state of California for relief for small businesses? I'll turn it to Sebastian. Take it away. And then we'll go through the list.
So LA County had a grant program. It was $10,000 to qualifying businesses. We do know that they were prioritizing businesses in the unincorporated areas of LA County. But that application went live yesterday at 8 in the morning. They were closing it down as soon as they received 150 applications, and they closed it down, I want to say, in maybe 10 minutes. I know 2 or 3 people that were able to get their application in, so hopefully that'll work out. And I know Tanua, Verizon, and LISC are doing a grant as well.
So yes, so that I mentioned at the top of the call, we had one run round 2.5 million. If you happen to get on Twitter and can tweet the hashtag pay it forward and tweet at one of your small businesses during a live event that they host on Tuesdays evenings, now moving to Thursday evenings. Last night, Alicia Keys was on. Verizon will donate another $10 to this fund, and we're hoping to get another 2.5 million in another couple of weeks so that we can put out another round of those grants. They were for $10,000 this last go around. We expect to do something very similar again. In addition to that, we're glad that the LA County moved forward with what they're doing. We recently put out a small business toolkit for cities because we want to encourage cities to do what they can until we can get the federal help. So we are encouraging cities to really put together their own grant programs. And we're working with a couple of cities right now. We know the city of Long Beach has a small grant program for local businesses. We are working with Orange County right now and are looking at putting together a grant program with some of the cities there. And we have another grant program besides Verizon that we are focusing on for all of LA County that we should be able to announce again in about another week. So those are some resources. What I'm seeing cities do as well are these micro loan programs. I know for a number of businesses, you know, it's hard to hear that they are going to be going after micro loans that are loans, they're not grants, so they do need to be repaid. We know the city of LA has a program like that. We are planning to launch the Kiva Los Angeles program open to a number of small businesses in LA County, micro being anywhere from $500 to $15,000 under that program. These are 0% interest, 0% fee loans, but they are loans, and the goal is to be able to pay them back so that we can support other businesses. But the underwriting is similar to, you know, you've got a strong business, you've got a good idea, you just need the capital right now. We're trying to figure out how to help get that to folks. Then the question was about the state of California. Some of you may know in the state of California, we do have a state disaster guarantee program. And part of what I'm seeing though is that at this point, given the federal resources that are much larger and much more cost effective for businesses right now. So the interest rates on the California state guaranteed backed loans are double the rates right now that you could get from a EILD loan or even the PPP, which, you know, could be totally forgiven, including the interest. So we do have that program, but I don't see it being used until it's clear that there is no other federal help coming. But it certainly behooves us to begin to talk with California legislators about, you know, what can be done in order to be able to try and bring the program in alignment with where the market is right now.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If I could just
Yes, please.
Add really quickly. So the governor last week did, to Nua's point, did announce $50 million of an allocation to the iBank program, which does facilitate the state disaster loan program. And someone did ask in here about ITIN holders. So we acknowledge that some of that portion will be available to ITIN holders, but just want to let you guys know this is an ever-changing, very fluid application process for the 50 million allocation that this governor did appropriate for this this program. And so we don't have an up-to-date list on which lenders. Some of the lenders that were participating have already met their cap. And so I know that there was a call to action to add additional lenders into this program. So just wanted to flag for you all.
Great. I wanted to shift for just a second to questions about unemployment. There's two questions here about unemployment that I think are worth noting, among many that are worth noting. Does self-employed qualify for the 600 weekly? How about the base unemployment as well, or only to 600? And can go ahead. I don't want to. Sorry, I heard something there. So I'm not sure who's able to, maybe one of our SBDCs about unemployment. How does that self-employed person, that independent contractor, how do they apply for EDD unemployment? What's available? Or is silence maybe? You know what? It sounds like we'll have to do some research, and we'll post the answer to that question with our question guide after this webinar, because it doesn't sound like anybody's got that answer right now.
No, we hadn't prepared for that per se.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we and I did do some research on it, but I don't have it handy. We know that independent workers are eligible, gig economy workers, for example, to apply for the state employment, and you would be eligible potentially for the 600. But let me see if I can find the research on that while we're chatting.
Great. Thank you.
And that's the big thing is that according to the legislation, an individual contractor qualifies for EIDL, PPP, and unemployment. Now, given that those three might get a little tricky in terms of what you use the funds for, what you're supposed to use the funds for, I would really suggest that before they do that, they do speak to somebody who knows the EDD, backwards and forwards, and can help them navigate those waters.
And the other thing to keep in mind that's critical is that you have to show that if you end up applying for all of those, you have to show how you're using them to cover different costs. Because at some point you will have to clarify what are you using those resources for, and you have to have and independent costs that you're showing that you're using them for.
So for the PPP, what I know a lot of people are doing, they're actually taking those funds into a separate account and then issuing the payroll out of that account. That way, it's a very clear line of sight that the PPP funds came in, went out to payroll. For sole props and independent contractors, and maybe people that were a little less formal in how they paid themselves, make sure that the funds go into a business account, and then whatever leaves your business account into your personal account, consider that your payment to yourself, and keep those records handy so that when the time comes, you have a business account with business expenses, and then you have a transfer from the business account to the personal account, and that's your payroll to yourself.
Great, thank you. There's a number of questions about that we've gotten in the past as well about being able to talk to someone. It says, this is a great comment from Barbara, who's on the comment chat. She says, the only real human contact with questions and answers happens on these calls. most banks refer you to a link and no one wants to answer any questions. So what is the resources available for people who need a little more direct support? And as where do you refer people to when they call the help desk? If someone needs more direct assistance, where's the places you turn people to?
This is where we need the help of our banking partners and friends. What we are seeing is that there aren't enough places, and there's only so many of us and only so many hours of the day to be able to talk to people one-on-one. And given that we are, distancing, it's very, very difficult to create the space to try and get these questions answered. We think that there is a need for some robust technical assistance and some more online forums like this, or at least giving people 15 to 20 minutes to chat with someone. But we've got to have the resources to do that.
Got it.
So,
and go ahead, Sebastian.
no, this is Brian. I was just going to say, on behalf of, the banks, I can talk about Wells Fargo. Certainly the number of indications of interest as well as the number of applications that we're processing. We're doing our best to support those folks. And I know that wait times when calling in can be tough. And some of our staff in the branches, have been getting lots of questions. And internally, we've been supporting these people as well as we can. We publish updated, frequently asked questions documents internally as well as externally as well to be as helpful as possible. The number one question that I think we have been fielding is, where am I at in the queue? And, as folks come in, with the indications of interest, we place them in sequence to be fair to everybody. And folks really want to know kind of where they're at in the queue. And we've had this, turned on for less than a week now. And in order to anticipate and provide guidance on what we call SLA or service level agreements, what can you expect over the next few days? We've been trying to proactively communicate to everybody that has expressed interest and let them know kind of where they're at in the process. But we cannot, tell somebody, oh, they're number 69 in the queue, and right now we're at number 45. It's just not the way that the system is set up. But just know that we're working as hard as we can to follow up with everybody. And our bankers, our processors and underwriters at the same time has been building the plane while it's flying over the last week. And I would just beg you to be patient right now.
And I should add, for people that have questions that are particular to their business, which we've seen a lot, so in Los Angeles, you have the Small Business Development Center, including Bixel Exchange, where I advise. They put they onboarded 20 new advisors yesterday, and they're putting us out there on the ground to try to get to as many people as quickly as possible. Most of these are, hey, I'm an independent contractor, I sell this, does this count as that? Or what can I say about, the number of employees? They're very simple questions, but they're very related to an individual business. So check out the Small Business Development Centers, the SBDCs. They're funded by the SBA, they're free. SCORE is another program funded by the SBA where you get free advice and mentorship. The City of LA has 9 business source centers that offer free guidance and advice. If you know somebody who's a financial advisor who you trust, an accountant or somebody, go to them. Do not pay for help or advice. Not a good idea, especially when you can get it for free. You never know what you're going to end up with if you respond to some of these offers. So definitely look for your free government funded resources. There's plenty of them. all impacted, but all working really hard to try to get as many one-on-ones as possible.
Great, thank you. You know, I had a question come in earlier, and I wanted to recircle back with Xiomara. What does it look like? What's the future look like related to some of the policies that are coming at the state or federal level with relief to small businesses? As Dr. Jones said at the beginning, this isn't going, you know, the direct impact of social distancing isn't going away anytime soon because it's working. So what are we seeing happen for relief for small businesses, sort of looking into the future if you had a crystal ball?
Well, I mean, there's obviously clearly some immediate needs around the capital needs that small business owners needs that small business owners will need. There are, you know, indications around what the workforce needs will be of business owners once we reopen our doors or get to some level of normalcy. You know, we're excited about the governor's efforts on both fronts. The state here is taking leadership. OnwardCalifornia.org was one of those sites that the governor set up in partnership with Bitwise Industries, which does create a feature for folks to be able to look for job opportunities. At the statewide level, the Workforce Development Board centers are going to be re-strategizing how they can best meet the needs of folks looking for employment, as well as business owners that will need to rehire staff. For policy implications at the federal level, you know, this next stimulus package, this is an opportunity to be able to mobilize and to be able to ensure that we are amplifying the voice and the needs of small business owners. As mentioned, I welcome folks to check out our policy platform, which is available on our website, the letter that we sent to the SBA administrator, as well as you know, the work that we're doing. We have a sign-on campaign as well. We really need to ensure that our federal elected officials, as well as our state and local elected officials, recognize the tremendous economic impact this will have for our small business community, and rather for their employee base that they also employ. Here in California, business owners create 2 out of every 3 jobs. And so if this is not a population that is placed at the forefront as we think about policy recommendations, we are going to be looking at some very long-term economic impacts. And so I just recognize, I want to take a moment really quickly to thank all of the other guest speakers that are here and the experts, and for all of the work that they and their respective organizations are doing to ensure that business owners are equipped with the tools and resources they need to get us through this time.
Great, thank you for that. You know, we are coming up on the end of our hour. I know there was a number of questions that we tried to get to. If you feel like your question hasn't been answered and you have a very succinct question, if you could put it in the chat box right now, and we will make sure that we can address that in the Q&A. We just want to make sure we capture it really well. I'd like to now turn it over to Elaine Rodriguez to talk a little bit more, just as another resource available for all of you as you still continue to think about your questions and what you want to do for your personal situation. Turn it over to Elaine.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, everybody on the panel today for joining us, and everybody that is on this call. I know we covered a lot of information, and I know there's a lot of questions about you know, all of the different specifics to your business. As Sebastian mentioned, there's a lot of available help and resources, you know, in the LA area and California in general, right, to help you with all of the different portions of the different programs and how to apply for one, for the other, and how do they work in conjunction with each other. So one, as you guys see on your screen, and I dropped it in the chat a couple of times, this bit.ly link, we are offering one-on-one assistance. So Big Sur Exchange at the LA Chamber, we've established an advisor relief team in place, and it's designed to help all you small business owners and entrepreneurs to sort through the information covered today and all the different resources, navigate the different resources in the process. And so I want to make sure I encourage everybody to you know, sign up for the free one-on-one advising. We are working as hard and as diligently as we can to get everybody through the pipeline to speak to somebody that can help you through your individual case. You don't have to be a member of the chamber to do this. All of our services are free of charge. And so again, We just want to ask everybody to be, patient as we work through all of the requests, but we are working diligently, and we are adding on more advisors every day to, help you navigate through the process. The link is up there. I will drop it on the chat as well. bit.ly/Pixel Advising. It's a short link. Work through that. For those of you that registered for the webinar this morning, you've already completed half of the application anyway. So we're trying to make it really simple for you guys to speak to somebody that can walk you through the process.
Thanks so much, Elaine. And with that, I just want to thank once again all of our panelists for sharing their insights. All of them are with organizations that are here to serve you as small businesses in Los Angeles. Please reach out to them. We will be emailing all of you a recording of this webinar so you can review it as well. It will also include the chat when we do, and we're working on posting, and we'll post out the questions from this with some answers so that you can review that as well. Please join us again Tuesday back at 10 a.m. In fact, every Tuesday and Friday, we will continue to provide these small business virtual forums. And thanks again to the partnership between the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, the Dr. Lucy Jones Center, and Wells Fargo to being able to provide this to all of you. Thank you for your patience and your commitment to building a thriving economy now and into the future. Thanks so much.